It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. While you're checking us out, go over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video if you haven't, turn on that notification bell so you never miss a video. And whether you're watching over on YouTube or you're listening on the platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcast, go check out the description of each and every show that we put out. We've got year 7 of Rocking Around the 412, which is our Christmas fundraiser. The past 6 years, with the help of everybody that's donated, we've raised over $32,000 to be able to provide children in the local 724 and 412 area codes the Christmas that they've always deserved. As well as the last couple years, we've also partnered with the East Rochester Salvation Army, adopting kids off of their angel tree. If you're interested in the East Rochester Salvation Army portion of the donations, the cutoff for the gifts to be back at the Salvation Army is December 9th. So either get those gifts to Smitty or the Salvation Army before that date. Otherwise, our actual GoFundMe goes until probably the week after that, as far as us getting gifts for children not related to the Salvation Army. So if you're interested in all of that, the GoFundMe is below. You can message Smitty or myself, or talk to us on Around the 412 on social medias as well if you want to reach out and get involved in any sort of way. There's also prizes that people win as well. We got some sports memorabilia, Around the 412 memorabilia, some Pens tickets that we always give away to people that donate. So if you're interested in any of that, go check out the description. Around the 412, Rocket Around the 412, GoFundMe is there, as well as so many other links, because we got a ton of great sponsors. What isn't great is Penguins hockey as of late. Man, oh man, we knew last week we had 4 games to talk about. Splitting the first 2 games, we felt pretty good, okay, about the Penguins' performances. Now they had a game against Buffalo where they hit the milestones. Sid gets his 1600th point.
Awesome night to be there, by the way.
Yeah. Subtle flex. Malkin gets his 500th goal. Smitty was in attendance. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's why they haven't won these games. Is you're not there.
Give me season tickets. Yeah,
I think that's a valid point that you're making. But after that game, they've dropped 3 straight, and we have so many questions still about goaltending. Alex Nedeljkovic has now thrown his hat into the ring of who on any given night is going to be starting for the goaltenders. I mean, where do we even start with the state of this team right now?
Okay, so let's actually go all the way back to the first game that happened with the milestones and start off on a good note, because I feel like this is going to quickly go in the other direction following that. But we can at least start off happy, because what a magical night on a random Wednesday night at PPG Paints Arena. Great seats, by the way. Shout out to my boy Pat for the seats. For that one, took it in with my boy Danny Shirey. If you're watching and listening to this, you probably know Danny. He was there as well, my boy John. But what a night to be at PPG Paints Arena, to have the milestones take place, to have the lead then fall behind within like 40 seconds. The Sabres scored 2 goals to take the lead back, just to have Rakell score with 40 seconds left in the game to send it to overtime. And then, of course, it's Sid getting his first and still only goal of the season, right? That's still his only goal that he scored this year, which we can have a conversation about Sid as well as we go deeper on here. But that game literally had everything. It was awesome to be in attendance for. And I said before the game, I remember we made predictions on last week's episode for who was going to start. You said Tristan Jarry. I said Blomqvist. It was Jarry that started, but we ended up seeing both anyway, as has been a theme lately with Tristan Jarry starts. So kind of got the best of both worlds there, even I don't know if best is the correct word to use there. But yeah, it was a cool night to be there. And again, since then it's kind of gone downhill, but at least for that one night, that's something that I'll never forget and you can't take back. So was very happy to be there.
Yeah, that was a historical night for Penguins history, really, because you look at the milestones that those guys were hitting. 500 goals from Malkin. I can't remember how many players have hit 500 goals, but he's Mr. 101 in our hearts, because he wasn't on the NHL's top 100 players of all time list. But yeah,
there's
48, but he's the number 101 on that list, by the way. I just thought it was a great night, capped off by great moments. And of course, Gino was the one that assisted on Sid's 500th goal, so naturally it had to be the case where Sid is the one assisting Gino, the lone assist on his 500th goal. It couldn't have been written any better in that game. And the theatrics of all of it with the back and forth of the game, obviously, I think everybody would have been better suited if instead of a 6-5 win in overtime, we won 6-0 or something along those lines. But the theatrics and the drama in the game and having Sid score in overtime, I don't think that the NHL writers could have written it up any better than they did as far as
that's an interesting point, because I feel like if you could guarantee that your team was going to be on the winning side, you actually would be okay with that happening.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's certain things that go against that, like, well, that means your defense or goaltending is playing poorly. But at the same time, just being a spectator, witnessing that, you don't get those kind of moments in a 6-0 game. That the same feeling that you get from those moments is not the same in that instance.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, at least for one night, checked a lot of boxes in terms of milestones and historical context to be added to the Pittsburgh Penguins franchise. But as we mentioned, been downhill since then. The Carolina Hurricanes came to town on Friday, and I don't know what it is, man. Like Carolina, even no matter what the state of these two teams are, it just seems like Carolina has their number over the last few seasons. And I will say, I thought for at least the first 20 plus minutes, maybe like 25, 30 minutes of this game, it was relatively even, I thought. But then the Hurricanes' legs just took over. The Penguins weren't able to keep up with them for the most part. From that point on, it was a no-show. I thought the only two guys that really looked like they had their legs from start to finish were Drew O'Connor and Yoel Blomqvist, who started that game. But yeah, I for the most part, a no-show in that contest, which took us into the Western Canada trip, which 6-3 loss to the Jets, which, like, okay, the first period pretty even, but then the second period, the Penguins went from having their best like first half of a period that they've had in quite some time, like absolutely dominant, because the Jets were out shooting them by quite a bit. Actually, the first period wasn't that even, now that I think, which was the reason that game was tied after one. But second period, I thought the Penguins kind of took over. Definitely had their legs. They had the forecheck going. Like, it was a quintessential Mike Sullivan game, like a throwback Mike Sullivan game where the team has their legs and the forechecks rolling and defense leading to offense going the other way. So they follow up the best half of a period of hockey that they had with the worst half in the same period, in the second period, to allow 3 goals and end up being on the losing end of things going into the third. Then it got worse from there, obviously losing a 6-3 result. And then the game against the Flames, I'll be honest with you, had to stay up late to watch the entirety of that one. I didn't think this was a bad game. I thought that the Penguins had a couple bounces go against them, but I thought they played pretty well with the Flames. The one thing, it's just like, man, once again, creeping up, that big mistake late in the game, the last minute of the third period, that just seems to continue to bite them over the last 3 seasons. Like, regardless of how they play for the first 59 minutes, as long as it's a 1-goal game, you're worried about what's going to happen in that final one, and they haven't been able to escape that.
Yeah. I'll backtrack a little bit. I'll start with the Hurricanes. I thought the game, like you mentioned early on, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought that the Penguins were keeping up pretty well with them, and then the Hurricanes kind of took over that game. But at the same time, a couple of their goals were on the power play, so I had a hard time because I didn't actually watch that game. So I have a hard time knowing or divvying up blame as far as, like, is it on the penalty kill or was it on Blomqvist in that game for the goals against? But 2 of their goals were on the power play. And just historically, since 2019, including Saturday's game, the Penguins are now 3-10 since the start of 2019 against the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes have continued to plague them. I feel like the Hurricanes have kind of turned into what the Boston Bruins used to be for the Penguins. It just, for a while, it seemed like it didn't matter whether you're playing in Pittsburgh or you're playing in Boston. The Bruins had the Penguins number. That's kind of how I feel about the Hurricanes right now. Something about the games, even if I don't feel like the Penguins are outmatched, they just have a tendency to play poorly against that team. But yeah, the Hurricanes just tilted the ice, took it over, and that's going to be the case. And like I said, they scored twice on the power play. Penguins were 0 for on the power play in that game. So it is what it is. That Jets game, it got ugly and it got ugly fast. You said it. You hit it right on the head. I thought that they played a really good period, like you had mentioned in that second period, but then something shifted, and I don't know what it was. Well, it's a combination of several things: poor defensive play, poor defensive positioning, poor defensive thought processes on the parts of your defensemen and their decision making, and then goaltending as well is continuing to be a issue. I didn't think that Ned was that great in that game in his first game back. And there's the Jets, excuse me, we're just kind of piling it on. But I do think that in this game that we just most recently had against the Flames, I thought that the Penguins' performance overall was better than what you saw against the Hurricanes and what you saw against the Jets. I thought that the goaltending from Ned was better, except for the shootout. If there's reasons I don't want to go to a shootout,
yeah, if a game
you can pretty much chalk it up to an out for two reasons. I don't really trust any of our goaltenders. Well, I shouldn't say any. That's kind of not fair towards Blomqvist. We haven't seen him in a shootout performance yet. But when it comes to Jarry and it comes to Ned, I don't trust either of our goaltenders in that situation. Ned's let up a few goals where you'd think he'd like to have those back or should have made a save, made a better effort. But going hand in hand with that, going to a shootout and watching our skill position players just give absolutely no effort, including guys like Sidney Crosby. Like I would be perfectly fine having like Cody Glass take a shootout goal because I'm pretty sure he's going to give more effort than Sid. Sid just skates down one side of the ice, gets to the top of the slot, and then takes a wrist shot. If he makes it, great. If not, which more often than not recently he does not, then whatever. He hits the post on his shot. It drives me nuts watching this team in the shootout for how talented they are individually. If they gets past overtime, I always assume the Penguins are going to lose that game. So, but in that game overall, I thought Ned was better than in the Jets game. It makes the goaltending conversation interesting because Kyle Dubas talked about it this week. They have three guys, and none of those guys are really pulling ahead right now for who should be the starter if Blomqvist should be going down to the AHL. Because honestly, ideally, you do want him to be going down to the AHL and having Ned and Jarry be mantling that in the NHL. But at the same time, if Blomqvist is going to be your best goaltender, you can't send him down to the AHL. He's giving you the best chance to win. That's something that I think is going to be interesting to monitor with the games coming up, how they divvy up the starts. Because Ned's gotten 2 in a row. I wonder if like this next upcoming game, if they go back to Blomqvist. I don't care if they ever go back to Jarry for the rest of his career. I don't think that he should be starting right now. And I'm pretty sure I would, if I'm making the decision, I would only be deciding between Blomqvist and Ned right now. And I don't know what they're going to do with Jarry, quite honestly. But we can talk about goalies in a second. But overall, the performances from this past week in the 4 games, Buffalo, good offensively. None of the other games are that great offensively outside of moments. But the one glaring thing to me, and we talked about it in the preseason, how bad this area of the ice was going to be. Defensively, this team is an absolute mess. In their own end, they are a mess. Their defensemen need to learn how to play smart hockey because right now, Chris Letang, Erik Karlsson, Marcus Pettersson, honestly, 2 of the ones like Ryan Graves and then Jack St. Ivany, who's one that we talked about in the first episode after the first few games, didn't have a good outing. I thought that he and Graves played fine against Calgary. I thought that Graves and St. Ivany overall, since we last spoke, has been some of the, I don't want to say like better defensemen because obviously like they're not great, but as far as just the defensive lapses that we're seeing from some of these players, like you have Erik Karlsson making errant passes. You have Chris Letang just missing on assignments in front of the net. You have Marcus Pettersson getting out of position, which is very unlike him. And you have Matt Grzelcyk doing whatever the hell he does. I don't know. Whatever Sullivan did also in that Flames game with his defensive pairings, going to Grzelcyk and Karlsson, I don't want that to ever see the ice again. That was probably the worst defensive pairing they could have drawn up, and it showed on the ice. It was awful. The defense, to me, is the thing that stands out in these 4 games and in this season as a whole. And I guess you can lump in some of the forwards with this as well. Like they could play better defensively in their own end. But ultimately, we knew the defense was going to be an issue. I just didn't think it was going to be this glaring this early on. And that's the thing that I take away the most. Goaltending aside, no matter who's the goaltender is, they're not getting good defense in front of them.
Well, I think that a big storyline so far this year has been Marcus Pettersson's play. To be honest, he wasn't that great the back half of last season, but I think that we're getting into a territory, at least here early on, where we can say, man, it's kind of a good thing that they haven't extended him, because they'd be, tied into this. And maybe we're going down a similar path with him like we went with Brian Dumoulin, which sucks because those are two of my favorite Penguins. At least within, since my 20s.
And fairly similar players.
Yeah, so I think that there's probably a correlation there. So maybe, unfortunately, you're seeing that decline take place right now. But the scary part of that is you came into this season banking on him being your best defensive defenseman. And if you don't have that, we talked about the concerns that we have on the left side with Grzelcyk and with Ryan Graves also on the left side. If Marcus Pettersson's going to play the way that he has to start the season. Now, actually, against Calgary, he had the highest game score of anybody on the team. Him and Letang were their best defensive pairing. He had the highest game score. But largely this season, I think that he has not been very good. And you look at the defensive pairing, it's like, okay, where's your stabilizer? Like, you don't have that presence if it's not going to be Marcus Pettersson. So I think things could get very scary here if Marcus Pettersson does not return to form. For the wrong reason, if Marcus Pettersson does not return to form, that could be a game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. That's got to be a first, right? He's playing the Game Changers ad on a negative
note. Yeah.
As far as the goaltending goes, it is going to be interesting. Kyle Dubas, you said I don't know when did you say last week that conversation took place, but
this week.
Oh, this week. He was Josh Getzoff. Is that what you're talking about? The sit down that he does weekly with Josh or no? Okay. Yeah. Cause I was just say whether that was or not that you're referring to, literally just today, he reiterated the same thing on like that Penguins weekly thing that he does or whatever with Josh. So it is going to be interesting.
I'm trying to talk as if we're not breaking the fourth wall. This is not coming out.
Oh,
this is not coming out today. This is coming out tomorrow.
Yeah. So Wednesday.
Now we're breaking the fourth wall.
The people know at this point. And to be honest, it's even different than it normally is because we're wearing different clothes than we were when we record the Steelers episode, which is typically not the same case, not the case. So,
same hat, though.
But either way, we are both wearing the same hat, which I would say go get yourself one, but you can't. So limited edition. Speaking of the goaltenders, though, you said the word ideally in there in terms of using Jarry and Nedeljkovic, and I get what you're saying. But at this point, like, I don't know that is ideal. Like, for me, when I think ideally,
I feel like I got to defend that saying. Ideally, you want your goaltender making $5.25 million to be NHL playable. I'm not saying that he is. Yeah. I'm not saying that the best case scenario right now, given the state of affairs with the Penguins and what they have shown on the ice, is that Jarry and Ned are the two goalies. But ideally, you want your guy making the most money to be at that level. Now, if it's up to me, I'd put Jarry on waivers right now, send him down to the AHL. If he gets picked up, great. If he doesn't, who cares?
Yeah. Ideally, I'm trading the contract. I just don't think that they're going to be able to do
that's
so.
like a crap. I feel like you have a better shot of someone claiming him off of waivers than someone trading for him.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, in a trade, the Pens could retain salary. In a waiver claim, they'd be picking up the entire.
Okay, then I feel like we need to add another caveat. An ideal trade is we don't retain anything.
That is true. That is true. So looking at it now, zooming out with where we are sitting at current day, not just with what Jarry is making and all these other things in place. I think you got to find a way to have him not on this roster. I don't see the path forward with him being on it. I see the path forward being Joel Blomqvist and Alex Nedeljkovic running as the 1 and 2 tandem. And I don't know what that workload looks like, right? Because like we talked about Nedeljkovic, seeing the numbers really regress when the workload gets that big. Like, is he capable of taking on a starter's workload? And if not, is Yoel? We don't know the question to that. But like, how do you divvy up the starts if it is those two that you're running with? But I think that we're going down that path. Like, Nedeljkovic starting back-to-back games now. You got to think, like, if they didn't plan on Yoel being a part of this, he would have been sent down already. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he makes their next start, or if he at least starts one of the two over the weekend. Like, I think that that's going to happen.
I think he needs to. I think that you really got to find a front runner in this race. Kyle Dubas basically saying no one has taken this football up and run with it. They need to have somebody win this job, because right now it's almost like nobody wants to win this job. Ned was given the opportunity, getting back-to-back starts this past weekend. And like I said, I thought he played okay in that Flames game. Not great down the stretch in the Jets game, but he was given the opportunity to take away with it, because if the Penguins had won these 2 games and he looked somewhat decent, I would say going forward, Nedeljkovic would be named the starter. But since he played the way he did,
just
they
the first,
lost
if you take just the first period against the Jets, he's the starter moving forward.
For sure. But since they played the way they did in front of him, and he played the way he did in net, and they lost both of those games, albeit one of them was in overtime, or actually not even overtime, it was in the shootout, I just don't think that it was enough for him to claim that job. And so I think that Nedeljkovic still has the opportunity, but so does Blomqvist. And I guess technically so does Jarry. But I would really wonder how Dubas, if he was put under the lie detector test, or he took that truth serum from Harry Potter, if he had to tell the truth, how he feels about Jarry. Does he even want his hat to be in the ring anymore? Or does he just want him off this team and he doesn't know how to do it? Same thing with Sullivan. I would be curious to see what he thinks too. Realistically, I think as far as the starter goes, it's a 2-man race with Blomqvist and Nedeljkovic. One, I just don't think the team has trust in Jarry. I don't think Jarry has enough confidence right now to play well. And this is going back to last season too. He's shown nothing for him to play well, and the team has shown nothing in him that they have the confidence that he's going to be the guy. And I think that between Blomqvist and Nedeljkovic, they're going to find their starter. And I think that they want to give Ned every position to win the job, just so they have an excuse not to use Blomqvist at the NHL level this year. Because like I said, ideally they'd probably like him in the AHL, where he could be the starter and getting the most reps. But at the same time, if he gives you the best chance to win, he needs to be up here, and that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'm not trying to say that this is for sure the case, but you know how I felt about this coming into this season, with feeling like the writing was on the wall based off the fact they didn't turn to him during that stretch run last year at any point. Meaningless game 82. Still didn't throw Tristan Jarry in net. To me, the writing was on the wall about his long-term future, at least. I think they would have traded him this offseason if they could have. So I'm not surprised at all the path that we're heading down here, unfortunately. What is a little bit surprising to me, and I want to get your take on it, is the lack of production from Captain Sidney Crosby so far this season. I mean, he's still second on the team in points, but just 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points through 8 games. And defensively, I feel like he has taken a large step backwards. That line, playing along with Brian Roston, obviously was originally Anthony Beauvillier. We've seen Drew O'Connor kind of jump up there. I don't think that that's worked out. Once again, friend of the show, Danny Shirey, pushing for Rickard Rakell to jump up into the lineup with Sidney Crosby to maybe help out in that regard. But what do you make of Sid's game so far this year?
I just feel like something's been off offensively, and I don't know that I can blame it on his line mates or anything like that. Just something has seemed off with him. I'm looking, his expected goals are 2.5 this year, but whenever you look at where am I looking at this? I'm looking on Money Puck according to this, by the way. Okay. And I'm trying to look at some of his like advanced statistics so you could see where an outlier could be. Goals above expected, he is 4th worst on the team at negative 1.5. And I don't know what it is of Sidney Crosby right now. Like, it's tough for me to say specifics, because I just don't think that he's playing that great at 5-on-5, and I don't think he's playing that great. And like I said, I don't know if it's his line mates or what it could be with Sid. Like, because obviously he's still being a productive player. He's still getting points. He's still doing some good things for them. But 1 goal and 6 assists, 7 points on the season, below a point per game right now. They played 8 games. That's something that is kind of alarming, to me, just because I would think that, and I predicted Sid to lead this team in goals, assists, and points again this season, and he still very well could. But I think him playing at his highest level is part of the reason that, or not playing at his highest level, is part of the reason that we've seen some of the things that we've have this season as far as like not playing up to their potential. And you're really relying on lines. Like, I don't even think of the first line as a huge threat anymore. In recent games, that's been the case. I think of the second line with Rakell and Malkin, Bunting kind of. I mean, Bunting hasn't done anything either. He's on a milk carton.
He actually got a healthy scratch within the stretch.
He got a healthy scratch against the Jets. That's not a great prediction on my part for breakout player of the year, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But right now, I mean, I've said this, and I said this after the game, playing some video games with some buddies. I think that the third line right now is probably your best line. Like on any given shift, they're giving you the best effort. And I can't say that for Sid line right now.
Well, it certainly was when Drew O'Connor was down there. With Drew O'Connor, Lars Eller, and Puljujarvi. But the thing is, they've mixed that up a little bit, right? So, I mean, like, do you still feel that way? Because now Puljujarvi jumped up to the second, Drew O'Connor on the first. So, like, do you still feel like that?
I mean, they have the best player on the team with Lars Eller down there, so probably.
Man, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points through 8 games so far. I mean, even Kevin Hayes got 3 goals. Rakell has 4 goals. Like, that's the thing, is you've gotten a bounce back from Rakell so far to this point. You've gotten 4 goals and 3 goals from Eller and Hayes, who were your third and fourth line centers, who you were probably much more worried about than Gino and Sidney Crosby. But I feel like that is where the concern has been. And maybe it's not fair to those guys, because this, honestly, the more underlying problem here has been, once again, going back to too much reliance on those guys to carry. And then they're at an age now where maybe they're just not able to. Maybe they need more competent line mates than they've needed in the past. And they're not here. So now what happens? So maybe we're placing blame on these guys for just a natural regression that's going to take place with age, when really the blame should be pointed at the construction of this roster and them not having the proper line mates.
Yeah, he's also he's having a career low in shooting percentage right now. I know 8 games is not great to compare against. Yes, Sid, that is. Speaking of him, he has a shooting percentage right now of 4.5%, which is way below his career low. So, I mean, maybe it's just the case of pucks aren't going in for him, and because he's shooting the puck. I mean, he's got 42 shot attempts. His shots on goal are 22. 13 shots have missed the net, 7 were blocked. But shooting at 4.5% on the season, I mean, that's like historically low as far as
the most shots on goal in the case.
I do not.
Without looking, Anthony Beauvillier.
Really?
23, yeah. And Rust is at 20, so like on a per game basis. Yeah. Rust has 20 in just 6 games. So like on a per game basis, he's the highest. But yeah, I don't know where you go from here. I don't know if there's right buttons to push in terms of line combinations. I don't know if there's right buttons to push for sure on the back end. And I certainly don't know what the answer is at goaltender. What I would do, I feel like we're in agreement here, at least on the first part of this, is waiving Tristan Jarry, seeing if somebody would take that bait, sending him to the A, clearing about a little bit over $1 million in terms of cap space there, but that's not really the reason to do it. But you do gain a little bit of flexibility in doing so. The question that I have more so, where maybe we differ, maybe we agree, is the way that you would divvy up the starts. Because for me, sink or swim, Joel Blomqvist, I'm finding out what's there, and I'd be playing him more than Ned.
So would I. if I'm picking between the two right now, I think that Joel Blomqvist has played the best. I thought he's looked better in his starts, and the stats back that up. I was looking at some of the goaltender stats on Money Puck as well. Goals save above expected. Joel Blomqvist is 1.9 in his 4 games played. Alex Nedeljkovic in his 2 games played was negative 0.7, and Tristan Jarry negative 1.7. I think that statistically he's been the better goalie. The eye test passes that test as well. If it were me, I'm looking at the schedule coming up. They've got the Oilers on Friday night. They play the Canucks on Saturday in a back-to-back, and then they're home against the Wild on Tuesday. If it were me, I'm starting him in at least 2 out of these 3 games. I would probably start him against the Oilers, if I'm being completely honest with you. Let Ned get that Canucks game in the back of it.
We're talking about sink or swim, the way that Edmonton has skated against us in the past. Yeah,
100%. I think that would be a good test for him. It doesn't mean that the team's going to play well in front of him. Like I said, the biggest thing to me, goaltending aside, has been how poorly the defensive structure of this team has been. But the Oilers, I'd give it to Yoel, have Ned start in Vancouver on Saturday, and then when you come back home and play the Wild, I would start Yoel again. 2 out of the 3 next starts, and just see if someone's going to decide I'm the starting goaltender, if someone can take away this job. If Joel Blomqvist does that, great. A lot of the conversation that we had this summer would be negated, because we talked about whenever they brought Ned back, how that's like blocking the way for Joel Blomqvist to have an impact earlier on at the NHL level. Well, kid, you might become the starter this year. So go out there and take it.
And in terms of Tristan Jarry, it's time to cut bait. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. I had to sneak in the word bait in there as well. Last thing I wanted to get to, we kind of touched on these players, obviously, but like the depth scoring, probably the one area that's like hasn't let you down so far this year. When you talk about the contributions from Lars Eller, from Kevin Hayes, but even just like maybe not the on surface numbers, but like Noel Acciari, I thought's played his role fine. Cody Glass has played his role fine. What have you made of those guys?
I thought they've been pretty good. Overall, I think it's a vast improvement from what you've gotten from the bottom 6 the last 2 years. The depth scoring goes hand in hand with that. I think that you getting several goals from Lars Eller, several goals from Kevin Hayes, and I lumped him in with these guys last week as well. But even though he's a top 6 player, just because of how bad he played last season, Rickard Rakell having 4 goals this year so far, that's also a massive improvement and something that I feel like needs to be noted by a lot of people. I thought they played really well. As far as defensively, I think they are improved in their own end, and I think that they are more sound than what we've gotten in the last 2 seasons as a bottom 6. I think that they forecheck well, and I think that's part of the reason that you've gotten more depth scoring from those guys. But I just think they've added more talent, and I think Lars Eller has been a benefit of that. But having Kevin Hayes, Cody Glass, I think that those guys have been really good. Jesse Puljujarvi, he's a full-time NHLer now. I don't think that he will be coming out of this lineup, and I don't think that he should come out of this lineup. The one interesting thing to me is whenever Blake Lizotte does come back, because that's going to be coming around pretty soon, who is the guy that's going to be coming out of this lineup? As of right now, I'd probably say that guy is Anthony Beauvillier, if I had my say, because I said it last week. Acciari would probably be the first to go, but as you just mentioned, in these games, he's played his role well. He's done fine for the most part. And Anthony Beauvillier, outside of the 2 goals that he scored in the same game, hasn't really done much in the Penguin uniform. He's one of those ones that are a negative goals above expected. So I think that he's probably the one that comes out with Blake Lizotte. Curious to see how they line up the guys after that, because as of right now, or at least as of last night against Calgary, Anthony Beauvillier was on that 3rd line with Lars Eller, and I'm curious to see if they would just put Blake Lizotte there, or if Blake Lizotte goes on the 4th line and they elevate somebody like Kevin Hayes to the 3rd line. Interesting to see how that's going to work out. But overall, the depth scoring the bottom six as a whole miles better than what it has been the last 2 seasons.
Interesting point that you brought up too about Beauvillier. It kind of got my mind going because I do think now there is the path to him being the guy to come out of the lineup. But like we were having that conversation, like it started when he was on the first line, and it was like, oh, he did come all the way out of the lineup all the way from the first line. But since the demotion has kind of already taken place now, I certainly think that there's the path to him being there. And honestly, that might be my guess. Like the fact that he has already been demoted. I mean, I know Michael Bunting's been healthy scratched once. I think that was in hopes to like wake him up and send a statement. I don't think that's the guy they want to have healthy scratch going forward. So I would lean Beauvillier, but like who would be your second guess if you like Cody Glass? I can't see it being Kevin Hayes, and I think Achari has like Sullivan seems to have too much faith in Achari, and I think he's been okay. I'm not saying he's been bad this year, but where do you lean?
I mean, based off of historical tendencies of Mike Sullivan, I'd probably say Cody Glass, even though I think that he's been a fine player. But I just think Achari would stay in the lineup. I can't see it being Kevin Hayes, especially since he's been one of the contributors down in the offensive zone in the bottom six. And then the other guys to me just don't make sense. As I mentioned, like Lars Eller not going anywhere. He's been very, very good, as I mentioned, and ironically, but kind of also not ironically, he's their best player. And then Jesse Puljujarvi, I think that he's done enough to prove and stay at the NHL level. So I'd probably say Cody Glass after Anthony Beauvillier. But if it was up to me, I'd go Anthony Beauvillier, then Noel Achari. Or Noel Achari, excuse me. Kind of mixed up names there.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where people stand on that as well. So be sure to hit us in the comments with your thoughts on that. Anything that we talked about today. Be sure to check out the description, all that stuff. Do you have anything else before we get out of here?
One thing of note, I was just looking at some others that are goals above expected. We were talking about Sid and how he has had a slow start to the season, but the guys that have been on his line, number one on the team in goals above expected, as far as like in a negative note, is Brian Rust at negative 2.9 goals above expected. Sid is at negative 1.5, and Anthony Beauvillier, which I'll just say him instead of Doc because he's been there the majority of the season. He is at a negative 0.4, and I'm wondering if he didn't score those 2 goals in that one game, where he would be sitting at as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna watch this team.
Just the line as a whole is not performing well. That's really what I'm getting at. It's not just Sid, but it's basically the whole line. But I guess that's the one that needs to drive it.
That's the difference, is like we've seen him, even despite that in the past, be able to still pull those guys up with him.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing that same elevation of players like we've seen in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if we do. But all right, before we get out of here, of course, I'll tell you guys about everything that's in the description yet again, including our friend Haley Wagner Small Business, Everything Custom Designs. I'll just let myself from the past tell you about it. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner, Small Business. She can do all that for you. She even does around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, Everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner. She does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. So there you go. This hoodie actually from Everything Custom Designs, and you can hit her up through her Facebook. Again, we keep mentioning it, but the Etsy not backed up yet, but you can still take orders through her Facebook and Facebook Messenger, so be sure to do that. If you want to get one of these, a t-shirt, a long sleeve, all that stuff, or your own custom order, again, Everything Custom Designs, Facebook link in the description, as well as GameChanger.la, Pitch6.la. Save yourself $10 using code AT412. There's some Penguin designs over there. There's also some Steelers designs over there, Pirates designs, music, TV shows, all that type of stuff over there. So be sure to check those out.
Get yourself a flat screen.
Get yourself a TV. Save yourself $10 on that TV by using. No, most importantly, of course, rocking around the 412 year 7. going on, as Tyler told you about at the beginning, but every single penny donated goes directly to impacting kids in our area, 724-412 area codes, giving them the Christmas that they deserve, that Tyler and I always had, never had to worry about where it was coming from. We also partnered up with the East Rochester Salvation Army. This is year 3 of doing so. If you want to be involved in that portion of the drive, be sure to get that deadline December 9th. Everything needs to be back to the East Rochester Salvation Army by December 9th. So if you are adopting a tag on your own, make sure that you have everything to me or to there by December 9th. If you are just making a monetary donation, make sure that it is in before that as well. So December 9th, hard cutoff for that. I haven't decided on the official date for the cutoff for everything else, but it's going to need to be at least a week, probably like a week and a half before Christmas. So I'd say December 15th-ish. I'll put out a hard date in the near future regarding that. But again, be sure to share the mission, read the mission. GoFundMe takes you right to it. You can donate there. You can share the mission from there and read the long form of the mission that we've been doing since 2018. Other than that, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts, any questions for a future episode. If you were listening somewhere else, subscribe, leave a 5-star review over there, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find us there, so be sure to do that. Follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412, except for Threads. And once again, forgot to take that off the banner, but I'm going to do that literally as soon as we end the show right now. So you guys will not see that next week. That is a promise. If I don't take it off, if you guys see it next week, I owe everyone that watches or listens to this a hoodie, and I'm not going to pay for that. So I 100% promise that's about to be taken off. Anyways, for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Penguins show. We'll talk to you next time.